plexiglass. So it looks like the cats are just having a lovely time. So I'm now starting to talk about flea preventative and heartworm preventative for cats. And they zoom in on the kittens who now decide it's time to leave. And they start jumping up and getting out of this giant plexiglass baby cat container. And Al Roker is now chasing them around the studio. So what is better television? Me discussing the issues of heartworm disease in cats, or Al Roker chasing kittens? So that whole script, like, that just exploded. And I just sort of gave up and kind of just let him keep doing his cat wrangling.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So most of what I learned was trial by fire and not to take yourself too seriously. And sometimes you just have to give way to what's more entertaining if you want to have eyes on you. So stuff can be technically correct, but if it's boring, no one watches it. So how do you, that mix between tantalizing and actually educational is tricky. And I succeeded a couple times and made a fool out of myself a fair number.
Well, that's pretty amazing. I really wish we had the video of Al Roker chasing kittens.
Yeah, I could probably find it somewhere. And it's true. You never know what's going to hit of the message that you put out there, what's actually going to stick for various reasons, you know? Yeah. Bringing up them and Al Roker and then the kittens are another example of that. But we just keep trying. I mean, and you just throwing stuff at the wall like noodles, right? And you just kind of hope that something hits, and every once in a while it does.
Yeah, I had an Etsy page for hats for cats for when I worked ER and all those overnights. I started knitting hats for cats. I didn't sell anything, so it was good that I had a backup career.
Yeah, I know. Thank goodness we have a backup career, right? That's the great thing about being a veterinarian. We can always find a job.
Exactly.
Technicians too. I mean, like do your crazy career, go for it. But then, you can pay the bills with this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you only need one really good idea in life. I'm just working on that one really good idea. Once I figure it out, I'll let you know.
Yeah, please do. I just keep trying stuff, and I don't know if I've had that yet, but it's going to hit sometime.
So, AAHA.
Right.
So you said you joined the board when you were first practicing emergency medicine, and shout out to Winston-Salem, by the way, because my mother-in-law lives there. So when you first joined AAHA, what prompted you to join the board?
Well, it is, I didn't know that AAHA had a board, actually, and shout out to Organized Veterinary Medicine, because I think as professionals, we sometimes think that the acronym that we belong to, whatever it is, AAFP, AVMA, AAEP, AAHA, that it's just like a letterhead and there aren't like people behind the letterhead, right? Or the website. And I had never thought about Organized Veterinary Medicine, but it turns out I had some contacts within AAHA that I didn't know I had. And and the same thing goes with the AVMA as well, and your local VMAs. Finding people to apply for these positions can be tricky. AAHA has some requirements, including you need to be a member, right? So you need to work for a accredited hospital or be an individual member for 3 years before you apply for a leadership role. And I hadn't done that. And so when I got the call, like, hey, you should apply to be on the board, I wasn't ready. So once I hit exactly my 3-year mark, like January 2nd, I called him like, okay, I've been on for 3 years. What can I sign up for? I want to help. I want to do something. And that's where this all started. So it is, everybody says it in as a volunteer leader that you get more than you give. And it's very, very true. The quality of the people that choose to spend their time in a volunteer leadership role are phenomenal. So I think my favorite thing to do as a board member was actually go to the past president's lunch at our old AAHA conferences. And so we had people that had been the AAHA president, which is the president of the board. So the CEO is paid by AAHA to run the organization, but the board is the boss of the CEO. And all of those people are volunteers. And so the past presidents, we had them going back, into the 80s, 70s and 80s. And so they had been around for a while, and they had such neat stories of the camaraderie that they had as a board member, but also all that had been accomplished in their career that they kind of had even a peripheral amount of involvement in. And it was really neat to hear how proud they were of their legacy. And I know I'm going to be, I will be the same way when I leave the industry, just so proud of everything that we've done, just as an industry as a whole.
So since you joined AAHA, so from the time you first started as a board member to now, how have you seen AAHA's kind of focus for veterinary medicine shift, or has it shifted?
So I would say in the past 10 years, AAHA has done a fair amount of shifting. And part of that is a change of leadership. So the previous CEO, Dr. John Albers, had been with the organization for 23 years, and he'd done a phenomenal job. About 8 or 9 years ago, we had a new CEO, Dr. Mike Cavanaugh, who just had a different outlook on the profession and was really striving to make AAHA remain relevant. Because what happens is, especially with our younger generations of veterinary team members, joining an organization just because it exists isn't really a thing. And it used to be a thing. Like people would join the AVMA and their local VMA just kind of automatically. And that's not the case anymore. All nonprofit organizations really have to show a value to their members. There isn't this like sense of obligation or that there used to be. There needs to be a sense of value. So we shifted our perspective a lot more to being member focused and figure out what do our AAHA accredited members need. And the big thing that so we're kind of hyper focused on our members and becoming more and more and more so. And then we're also really focusing on a certain aspect of the profession, which is veterinary team wellness. We all know, and I'm assuming your listeners are aware of the mental health crisis that we have in the veterinary health profession, both with technicians and with veterinarians and managers. And if you ask most veterinarians, we all know somebody that we've lost to suicide. And the actual act of counseling someone who's considering suicide or a suicidal ideation is beyond the scope of what AAHA is good at doing. We don't have an army of psychologists or psychiatrists, but we do have an army of people that do a very good job of running veterinary hospitals. And so our response to the mental health crisis is not so much focusing on how to treat the individual, but how to make the environment in which our veterinary teams exist, how to make that environment more supportive and more pleasant. Because we can't control their lives. We can't control their upbringing, whether or not they're predisposed to mental health issues or substance abuse, what's happened to them in the past that was a source of trauma. None of that we can control. We can control, as employers and as leaders, we can control the environment in which these people spend their time, 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a day. And we can control that part by really focusing on improving the culture of veterinary hospitals. And so that is our big focus right now. Our board has given us 5 years to really push this initiative. The initiative is called the Healthy Workplace Culture Initiative. And we are in year 2 right now. So we have created a lot of resources, and now we are trying to get them out there and have them be adopted by our profession. If you go to aha.org/culture, you don't have to be an accredited hospital to access this information. This is for the whole profession. And it doesn't matter where you are in a veterinary team, whether or not you're the practice owner or if you're fondly call them kennel kids, but the animal care attendants, wherever you are in the spectrum in a hospital, you have access to this information. And so you will find the webpage for the Healthy Workplace Culture Initiative. And inside of that, we have publications that are free that you can print off for just discussions at team meetings, all the way up to very interactive tools that one of them is called Aspire, which is a really fantastic coaching tool that you can utilize in order to really actively change the culture in your practice. And the other tool is called the Nexus Experience. And that is I'm oversimplifying a little bit, but it's like a quiz that you take, your employees and you take, that measures the amount of engagement that is present in your team. And it turns out that engagement is a very strong indicator for the health of a culture, just like BUN and creatinine is a good assessment for kidney function. So if you take the Nexus experience, you take this quiz, you get a score, and it gives you and your teams things to talk about how to improve your engagement, your staff's engagement, then you retest it, and you can sort of gradually see over time if your engagement's increasing or decreasing and what you're doing in order to make it to do that. So that's another tool that we have as well. So we're really excited about these tools, again, ranging from just really great visual resources, either to read, and we do have some videos to watch, all the way up to getting involved with Aspire.
When AAHA moved kind of more towards the focus of the workplace culture, how do you determine that's the direction you want to go in? Are you sending surveys to veterinarians? Are you just as a board kind of picking topics that you feel strongly about? Like, how do you because veterinarians are like herding cats, right? To agree on anything. Yes. And I mean, we don't want to talk, right? Like I'm impressed we've talked this long. So it's hard for veterinarians to admit where they're deficient, where they need help. So let alone something as heavy as mental health. And I mean, for me, my father's a psychologist. So I grew up in a family where, everyone has emotions and you talk about it, you vomit them, you get over it, you move on. But it was a rude awakening when I went to vet school, and everyone is, even if they're extroverted, they're so introverted about their feelings. I feel like I asked you 5 questions. So the first question is, how did you guys kind of, as AAHA as a group, move towards focusing on mental health?
Well, that's the cool thing about having a board of directors. So they are 8 individuals that have been selected by another group of individuals to represent as best we can the profession and what's needed in the profession. So we have strategic planning sessions, the board does, in order to figure out exactly that, which direction to go. Because the staff, and I have a neat perspective because I've been on both, right? I've been on the board thinking at a strategic level, and now I'm on the staff, and I'm more of a hamster in a wheel. Like I just go, 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 go. I'm not always thinking strategically. And that's the nice thing about the board. So we have strategic retreats and kind of, all right, what should we be focusing on as an organization? And this was so we came about this about 3 years ago. And this was at the height of the awareness that Dr. Sophia Yin was not an anomaly, and losing her to suicide wasn't rare. And there was more and more and more obvious signs of mental health issues. And shout out to one of my favorite Facebook groups, which is Not One More Vet, which I'd been involved in. And that is a group, for listeners that don't know, that's a group that is, its sole existence is to provide mental health support to veterinarians, peer-to-peer emotional support. And so we started, that would be posted, that somebody died by suicide, another team member. We lost a technician on the 9th in Chicago. So it's kind of a constant issue now. And I think that we're bringing it to light as an organization. We couldn't ignore it. And because it's not the right thing to do, especially when you actually have the opportunity to make it better if you can. At the time, it just seemed like a natural thing to do. The death of your colleagues, repeated colleagues, couldn't be ignored. And
you said you're in year 2 of
so we're in year 2 of implementation, and we have 3 more years to go from what the board will support and give us money for and that kind of thing. It likely won't go away by really focusing on this, but because, as you said, we're up against stigma, we're up against a lot of introversion, we're up against the natural characteristics of perfectionism that exist, are rampant, myself included, throughout the whole profession. Admitting this type of struggle is not something that we're good at yet. I think we'll get there, but I think it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
And so that's why we're not giving up for quite a while.
And have you gotten feedback as far as over the last 2 years